he was holding my hands down over my head. And the other one proceeded to pull down my trousers and underpants and inserted himself. Sorry. I couldn't fight them off because the pants were still around my ankles and he had my feet over on his shoulders and I couldn't move because my pants were there.
And so he dragged me into the bedroom by the side of the bed, and then he just ripped my jumpsuit off. And he just pulled his trousers down. And I turned my head to the side like that, and he dragged me back with his jaw, by the jaw, and held it so I was looking at him.
Anyway, he finished and I felt my hands being released and I went to sit up. So the whole time I had my eyes closed, but when I went to sit up, I opened my eyes and I just saw this hand come down and push my head down, and I saw the penis of the second fellow, and I thought he was going to make me have oral sex with him, but he just ejaculated all over my face and head. By which time I felt like vomiting or was gagging. And it must have been a couple of minutes later and I realised they'd gone.
He just raped me by the side of the bed, and at no time, and this was one of the hardest things I had to come to grips with, did he speak. I would have felt better, I'm sure, if he had called me the worst names he could think to call me. But he did not utter one word from the time he knocked me down to the time he left that house.
I just locked the door, went and looked at the children. They were sleeping soundly, and ran the bath straight away. I just felt violated, of course, but I felt putrid. I just wanted to get it all off me and from me. So I ran a deep, almost boiling hot bath. I don't think I put any cold water in it. And a scrubbing brush and the disinfectant and the flea shampoo and the normal shampoo and the Solvol from the laundry. And I just sat there and scrubbed myself and scrubbed, and I was red raw.
I don't know, I had about 10 showers that day in heavy disinfectant because I couldn't get this feeling of being clean. I felt dirty the whole time, even though when I got out of the bath, I still felt dirty. I got back into the bath and I got more disinfectant.
And I washed my hair about 6 times. I had all this gunk, and I just didn't think I'd ever get it out.
The minute I stepped out of the bath, I felt this dirtiness all over again. And that's why I constantly kept on having the baths, because I guess in retrospect, that's the only way that I felt that I was clean, was when I was in water. And I just kept it up all that day. And I actually cringed with the feeling of dirty. I'd started to scratch at myself.
What was the condition of your skin at the end of the day?
Burnt. Because I used very strong disinfectant.
And it was at that time that Martin came home and I was rinsing my hair for about the 6th time.
This is your husband?
Yeah. I was rinsing my hair for about the 6th time and I didn't even hear him come in. I just heard the bathroom door open. And he said, "I've brought a pizza home, love." And with that, I just jumped because I didn't hear him. And he said, "What's the matter?" And I just couldn't talk to him. I didn't want to look at him. I just wanted everyone to go away. I just wanted to be on my own. And next thing I knew, he was kneeling next to me and he said, did someone hurt you? And I said, yes. And he said, did someone rape you? And I just nodded.
I was tied to that bed for a total of 8 hours. Towards the end, if I could have willed myself to die, I would have, because I was in such pain. And there wasn't anything I could do. I was sweating, and because the door was broken, I had blowflies through the house all over me. I've got a blowfly phobia to this day. And just stuck there, stuck to this bed.
I got a phone call from Marty, who's Tina's son. He was very concerned about his mother because she hadn't turned up for an appointment in town. And I could hear him from inside just calling out to me, help, please help me, help me. And I went to step out of the car and I thought twice, I thought I better not go in case there's still someone in there. And I could still hear her crying out like with great sigh as if something was really wrong with her. And I thought I'd best get in the car and go back into the town to get someone to help me.
Cheeky and I raced out here and Annie was behind us. And we've come up the top here and the front window of the door was smashed. And I didn't know what to think and I heard Tina yelling out, help me, help me.
And the first thing I knew was a lot of commotion and 2 boys from the town came in and said, oh, this is terrible. Oh, what a mongrel. Oh, we'll get him. And they had hammers and everything. And I said, please, just untie my hands. Just please be very careful because I thought my fingers would have split like sausages.
When you heard that she'd been tied up for so long, did that concern you at all?
It did a bit, but I wouldn't say, it didn't emotionally wreck me or anything like that. Because at this time that I found out that I was, being caught, and I was sort of angry with her for telling the police, and pointing me out. So there was no feeling at all, really.
The news spread like wildfire in the town. I mean, we heard about it before it had got to television or newspapers or anything like that. And so the reaction was really immediate within the community.
And it was just such a huge shock because it wasn't supposed to happen in a small town, It's not supposed to happen around here. It made me scared of being home alone, out in the middle of nowhere where we live. And I did lock the doors when Mum and Dad told me to, and I didn't like the thought of having to wait around somewhere, after about 8 for someone else to turn up. I didn't like the feeling of, terror that I had sometimes when I was standing outside. It just didn't feel right.
The majority of the town was very supportive of Tina, but there was a few odds and bods that were not real helpful, like asking me questions like, did you see her in the raw? Did you see her tits? People saying, did you throw one into her? Like just stuff like that, and it didn't make me feel real crash hot after seeing what Tina had been through.
One of the most surprising reactions came from her own son, who was always a pretty laid-back, appeared uncaring sort of boy. And immediately this had happened to his mother. He became unbelievably protective, insisting on her having virtual weapons to protect herself with when he wasn't in the house.
Yeah, I wanted to get a gun in the house. She wouldn't have it, so I made her have a baseball bat. Just a lot more protective around women.
What do you mean around women?
All women, Just keep an eye on them, just look at them and see who's looking at them. Yeah.
What, to protect those women?
Yeah.
think it could have gone to a full rape?
I don't know. When I think back to it, I think it probably could have gone as far as they wanted it to. Because of the fact that I seemed to be down there and yelling and nothing happened. But then I also think if it went any further, surely somebody would do something. That's what I'd hope. There was a big pack of guys, 6 to 8 guys standing there, and they started whistling at me and saying, "Hey, you in the green shirt." And I just kept walking and ignored them, didn't even look at them, and went to the toilet. And then I came out, and one of them grabbed me on the arm, and his other mate, who was standing on the other side of me, grabbed my other arm. And the first guy said, "How about giving my mate a kiss?" And I swore at them and told them to let go of me. And they didn't. And their friends circled around me and started yahooing and calling me names and saying, "Come on, give my mate a kiss." And then they pushed me over. And all his mates started clapping and yelling, "Go for it." And I was screaming out, "Stop it, stop it." And I was helpless. I couldn't do a thing. And then I just kept screaming louder, and then the guy who was on top of me just punched me and said, "F you, you bitch." And the other guy just gave me a kick in the side, and they walked off. And I was lying there, and there's just people standing around me. And I got up and I ran with my shirt half undone, straight out the door. And nobody says they saw it.
I could see bruise marks on her neck and on the backs of her arms where she'd obviously been held. She was, like, I've been, a very good friend of hers for a number of years, and she was very loath for me to even touch her, just to position her in a better position. She was crawled up in the corner of a room with her fists clenched and, almost grabbing herself, a bit like the way that I've sort of described it, or I describe it to myself, as like a beaten dog.
They were very nice, the policemen. They were young and they were from the rape squad, and they said they went in and, she tried to talk to them and they tried to make head and tail, and they said that they weren't quite sure whether she had been raped, but they don't think that she had, but it had been something terrible that happened to her within the nightclub.
What do I do? I wasn't raped, so is it bad enough to report to the police? And the way I felt, I felt dirty. I just felt revolting. I thought, I'm not going to let these people walk. That I was thinking this quite clearly inside my head, whereas outside I was quite hysterical.
The first effect that it had on me was one of anger, and I was angry that something could happen to someone, such a beautiful person like Sally, that someone could actually do something like that to change her. And I found that when I was going out, and you're in a group, and there's many occasions where you'll see a girl and someone might make the comment, "Well, look at her, she's asking for it, isn't she?" I think after a few drinks, you're sort of socially conditioned. And this social conditioning is a sort of big thing that I think led me never to really recognise this before. I've had to come to grips with the fact that I've acted as an absolute prick, and I've done things which are totally unacceptable. And it's been hard for myself to look back on these things I've done, which aren't, sometimes you can say, well, they're not really that bad, I wasn't really that nasty. But then when you throw all things aside and you cut it down, you realise, well, I've done something absolutely disgraceful. And even
things like what? What sort of things?
Oh, well, there's times, you know, well, I've known where I've put a lot of pressure on a girl to come home with me, where, you know, I've known that a girl's probably been too intoxicated to make a proper decision about whether she wants to come home with me. You know? And I guess I've been a standard aggressive, sexually aggressive young male. I think if a few of the fellas out there realised the trauma that you can create by taking that stand, that aggressive male stand that she wants it. She wants you to con onto her. She wants you to take the strong line with her. If they could see what happens to a person, there'd be a great deal of modified behaviour about town.
Every night of every week, thousands of women across this country sum up potential partners. They respond, of course, to first impressions, physical attractiveness, attitude, character. But early in a new relationship, they must also assess, if they can, their companion's potential for sexual violence. Because a stranger is not always the threat, a woman is more likely to be raped by someone she knows. 2/3 of all women attacked in this country are victims of date rape or sexual assault by someone they live with or trust in some way.
It was Christmas Eve, and after work I'd arranged to meet one of my friends at a pub in the city. We spent most of the night together. At one stage, this man came up and asked someone to dance. So I went up and danced with him, and he seemed like a nice person, well dressed, quite nice looking. I remember he was very attentive, and I liked that. I thought that was very nice. He treated me very well. It got later in the night, and my friend had also met a man there, and it was sort of getting on, I suppose, for nearly 12 o'clock when the place was closing, and my friend told me that she was going off to meet her family for midnight mass in the city. And she left with this man, and she had no real concern about, I mean, she thought he was quite nice. I assured her that I was catching a taxi home because we don't live near each other. And she was quite content and happy to leave me there with him. Most of the places were closing, and he sort of touched on the subject of going back to someone's house, and I informed him that I lived with my parents. He virtually offered for me to come back to his place for coffee, and I said no, that I would have coffee with him in the city. After the coffee shop, he saw this lady with some flowers, and he said, "Would you like a flower?" And I said, "No, thanks." But a few minutes later, he went off and spoke to this lady, and he came back with a rose for me. I thought that was really nice. I said I was going home, and he said it was really hard to get taxis, and with that, he jumped out into the middle of the road, and I said no. I didn't want to go home with him. I wanted to get into a taxi on my own. And the taxi stopped quite suddenly down the road a bit, and with that, he sort of jumped in with me, and I thought, well, there was no way. I didn't really want to walk around the streets on my own. So I thought, well, I'll drop him off at his place because he lived not far from the city. So in the taxi, he became very attentive. He put his arm around me. He started to kiss me. He kept almost pleading with me. He kept looking into my eyes and more or less dropping his bottom lip like a boy. giving me these great boyish looks and really appealing to my my empathy or whatever, to my to me thinking that, well, he's going to be spending Christmas on his own, and he had mentioned to me that he was feeling lonely and this and that and everything else. So on the way out to his place, it probably would have taken 10 minutes in the taxi, I started to have thoughts about going in for coffee, and he'd said to me that the guy next door to him, in the unit next door, was a taxi driver. And he said, if you come back to my place, I'll get him to give you a lift home, because I sort of said that it'd be hard to get a taxi anyway and I'd have to sort of wait for a while. So when we got back to his place, he got the guy, he sort of directed the taxi driver. He never asked me or anything, virtually, and we stopped. He pulled right up the drive near his unit. I decided to get out with him. I don't know why I did that. I remember the kettle boiled, and so he stopped and went out and turned the kettle off, and he came back and he sat back on the couch with me. And I remember him opening my dress a bit and perhaps kissing me on my breast, and I let him go. And then he started to go for my belt on my dress, and that's when I stopped him and said, no, please don't. I probably would have been at his unit about 20 minutes then, I'm not sure, and half an hour. And he more or less just fobbed me off. And he went to go for my belt again, and I sort of stood up and said, I think I'd better call a taxi. I think it's about time I went home. And with that, he sort of turned around and I think he grabbed me or something. And he said, you're not going anywhere. I looked around at him when he said, you're not going anywhere, and his face had changed. In this nice, charming looking face. His hair almost seemed really ruffled. His eyes so wide open. I couldn't believe it. He just looked so different. I knew I was in trouble. I remember I got hysterical, virtually, and I thought if I pleaded with him, he'd let me go, that he'd realise what he was doing. I remember I kept talking and talking at him, telling him to let me go, and I think I swore. And I kept telling myself I just couldn't believe that I got myself into this. When I became hysterical, he tried to shut me up, and he put his hands over my mouth, and he stopped me breathing. And every time he released his hands or whatever, I'd scream and shout. And he kept telling me to be quiet, and I remember he jumped round off the couch in front of me grabbed my hands, and I remember him looking at me and telling me to shut up and to do as I was told. And he told me that, and I remember telling him that I hadn't slept with anyone before. Please don't do this to me. And it just seemed like he felt I was just saying it. He didn't believe anything I was saying. He made me agree to going with him down to his room, and I remember that he told me that the door, they never locked their door, and I thought, well, I'll agree to that. So he started to walk off, and I thought, now's my time. If I get out that door and scream, I know the people are home next door. I got to the door, but his door opened the wrong way. It opened the opposite way, so I fumbled at the door. By then he was there. But I got the door open and I got outside. I raced out as far as I could and I raced down into the driveway, but his unit was set back from the others. And I screamed and I screamed and I screamed, help me, help me. And he came up to me and he put his hand over my mouth and stuff and he was trying to drag me back inside. I kept screaming and that, and in the end, to stop me, he got his hands with his thumbs and he put them right down inside my mouth to the back of my throat. I couldn't breathe. I thought he was going to choke me. When he did that, I realised that he meant business. He wasn't just messing around. And I'd scream and I'd scream and I must have fought with him for about 10 minutes and no one came. So then all of a sudden I thought that perhaps I'd better give in to him or else he'd kill me. And all I remember when he was choking me and I wasn't breathing that last time, I could see my family. And all I could think of was that them waking up on Christmas morning and I wouldn't be there. So I gave in. He took me down to his bedroom and he told me to take my clothes off. My throat was so dry I couldn't swallow. I felt like it was swollen and stuff from him having his hands in my mouth and that. And I pleaded with him for a drink of water. And he kept telling me to be quiet. And in the end, he said I could, because I kept saying I couldn't breathe. I couldn't swallow.